Nice to see you. We have met. Oh, and Celina's joined us here, Celina.
She's really good at holding her pose.
I didn't realize we matched.
Does she know her? Is there a way to know if she's watching?
She did talk to Sandy, or email Sandy and said it was gonna, Celina and Sue, her daughter, were going to watch.
Great.
That was. Celina was going to be watching. Oh, good.
We're gonna wait just a minute or two. We've been told that there's some cars arriving in the parking lot. So we ask your patience, we'll let them in, and then we'll start.
You don't have any good jokes to tell? Then I realized not as many people were laughing. That was a good one. Come on, everybody.
Still people coming in.
Asking her questions. In the car. Over the street. I said, what do you like about the She's like, not as much as I used to already. It's kind of hard to get her to it. It's definitely a difference.
Wow. Just a long time. Well, I wrote it out because I need some dates. So they went through and gave me some dates. So I'm gonna make sure I got this so that I don't say the wrong date. My cheat sheet. Cheat sheet. Sandy, when Celina was here, she spoke to Valley, Grinnell, Ames, North Pine, and anywhere else that I miss any?
We have Roosevelt,
Roosevelt, I didn't.
Biniaz, Urban, Biniaz, Ankeny,
Well, it depends on the visit though, right?
Pardon?
It depends on the
The
visit.
first, the one
The
in,
first visit was
Valley?
North Valley,
And Casp.
and Cass.
that's what, well, no. I remember that one. No, North Valley. Didn't you go to Ames?
Not the first year. Yeah. She did that in 2019.
Huh. Okay. I think that was. Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Sandy Yoder, and I'm the director of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society. And on behalf of the board, the staff, and the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines, we're delighted that you could be here with us today to help us celebrate. Today we are celebrating 2 milestones for the Iowa Jewish Historical Society. The publication of Saved by Schindler, The Life of Celina Karp Biniaz. It's our first biography that has been done with the Historical Society, and more than 20 years of being open here at CASP. We are so grateful to all of you who have come today. None of what we celebrate today could have been possible without the generosity and support of each and every one of you in the room. You are the members and the donors, present and past staff and board members, who nearly 30 years ago recognized that no one was systematically collecting Iowa's Jewish history, that the artifacts were still being kept in homes across the state, but no one was collecting them to tell that complete story. And then you did something about it. You are also the life members, the annual members and donors, and donors to our very successful 20th anniversary campaign that enabled IJHS to dream for now going on 26 years. We dreamed, and you started a historical society in 1996. In 1998, we partnered with the State Historical Society of Iowa and produced Unpacking on the Prairie, the Iowa story, which attracted more than 40,000 visitors. And then in 2002, we opened the museum here at CAS. So thank you very much. In 2002, we did an event almost exactly to the date. It was October 27th, 2002, that we honored Mary Bucksbaum Scanlon for her gift that enabled the Federation to build this wing for the Iowa Jewish Historical Society and the auditorium. On that day, we had a very special program. Ellen McCracken was our speaker, and from those beginnings, IJHS has grown into an award-winning organization that inspires people to connect with and to preserve Iowa's history, Jewish history and culture. Thank you for being with us on that long journey. As you will hear shortly, the idea for the book that we're celebrating today began right here on this stage at CASP, one of Celina's first presentations in 2017. 5 years later, we are so proud to share the results with you. However, none of this would have been possible without the generosity of so many people. First of all, Robbie Winnick's family and friends, who established the Robbie Winnick Fund as a surprise to honor Robbie's 85th birthday. And she decided to use the funds towards the book. And to Lou Hurwitz, who couldn't be with us today, who, when Robbie asked him to join in the project, simply said, "How much do you need?" and jumped on board. And gave more, yes. He gave more. And then also Alan Zuckert, who also just simply asked, "What did Robbie need?" And Lou had become the largest donor in support of this project. Our heartfelt thanks to all of these folks who made this possible. We couldn't have done it without them. We also want to thank Lou Hurwitz he is the sponsor of today's event. One of the things you may not know is that Lou still remembers the day he met Celina when they were in the same 12th grade homeroom. He said he became an admirer of Celina's on that date and has continued to do so and loves to be able to support anything that she's involved with. As we gather today to celebrate Saved by Schindler and the 26 years of programs that the Iowa Jewish Historical Society has produced, we are missing one of the people who helped IJHS expand our educational outreach throughout central Iowa and across the state with a dozen presentations of her testimony about her experiences during the Holocaust. Celina Karp Biniaz. Celina is so sorry that she could not join us in person for today's celebration. As you know, her beloved husband, Benny, passed away earlier this month, and she still hopes to be able to join us sometime in the future to celebrate this book. We will never be able to thank Celina enough for sharing her story and helping IJHS reach thousands of people throughout Iowa and around the nation with her story. Since Celina could not be here in person, we thought the way that we could include her was to show you some of the clips from some of the programs that she has done with us. What you're going to see today are some of the clips from the program that was done here at CASP on September 12th, 2017, and became the inspiration for the book. Ethan, would you show the clips?
And 300 women. Towards it was almost end of September, beginning of October. One day, the 800 men were put in boxcars and sent off. And we, of course, the women left behind, had no idea where these people were or whether they got to the right place or anything like that. 2 weeks later, 300 women were put into boxcars and sent off. We traveled a day and a half. It happened to have been late at night, middle of the night. Since Czechoslovakia isn't so far away, we figured we were back at Schindler's factory. All of a sudden, the doors opened up, and we discovered that we were in Auschwitz. And so my first poem has to do with that place. Got too many papers. Sorry. This was written by me in March of 2015, remembering, as I said, when memories unfold, poetry after participation at the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz on January 27, 2015. Night, so dark, so cold, the wagon sways. The rhythmic pounding of the wheels repeating sends a message to my frightened heart. Do not stop beating. The sudden lurch, screech upon steel on steel. The door slides open. Rouse, rouse, angry voices shouting, a multitude of dogs barking. Plumes of fire illuminate the night sky. The smoke drifts over the gathered people. The smell, the awful smell. It is the smell of fear. We have arrived in hell. Auschwitz. A group of 30 women to the kitchen to peel potatoes. On one of those days, my mother volunteered to go with the 30 women, hoping that she could bring back some of the potato peels so we could have a little extra food because we were really hungry at that point. It just so happened that on that particular day, when my mother was with the group of 30 women, we were called out of the barracks and taken to another barrack, and it turned out to be a selection. We were told to strip naked, and there was Dr. Mengele, and this is my next poem. Selection. There he stands, resplendent in his uniform, shiny black boots, insignia on his chest, swastika armband on his sleeve, and in his hand a pencil. Unusual, this pencil, for with one flick to either left or right, it has the power to give you life or death. In front of him, a line of naked women, all shapes and sizes. This is my second time confronting the pencil. First time was not lucky, but the pencil beckons the group back in the line. My body is skinny, undeveloped, but clean. Don't know how or why. The will to live forces me to utter 3 words. Lassen Sie mich. This time, the pencil slowly leans towards life. I grab my pile of clothes, hugging them run out into the snowy outdoors. My pent-up emotions burst forth, hysterically crying, start to put on my clothes. I am only 13 and have gotten a reprieve from death from Dr. Mengele, the butcher of Auschwitz. An army to liberate us. It's a bedraggled army, a Russian on horse and lots of little people behind him in all kinds of torn uniforms, etc. And that brings me back to my next poem, Liberation. We are survivors. To exit barbed wire gates, 2 days we are waiting, not safe on the outside, with black shirts still marauding. A soldier on a horse appears in the distance. Behind him, a small, bedraggled group of soldiers. They have come to liberate us. We are survivors. The barbed wire's gate open. We are free, hesitant to venture beyond. How can one walk alone, not in a row of 5, never overseen by guards, armed, ready to shoot? We are survivors. How, after 5 years following orders, can we think and act on our own? Will we be able to restore our humanity, or will we always be held suspect in society? Will there be a rejoining with the rest of the family, or will we encounter their loss forever gone into eternity? We are survivors. Freedom is ours. Comes with problems. Can we retrieve former lives? Can we go back to homes we've lost? Having experienced horrific events, starving, fearful, we start our journey. 11 days walking, hitching, emaciated scarecrows reach Krakow. There is no welcome. We are not wanted. 4 months later, we're back on the road, leaving Europe, seeking new existence in more welcoming countries. We are survivors. We shall succeed. We got to Poland in boxcars again, guys, because that was the only transportation 2 years after the war in Germany. And we are going towards Bremerhaven, where we're going to go on a ship that will bring us to the United States. And this is the little poem that I wrote of that. It's called The United States SSC Marlin. That was the name of the ship. The fog horns sound. The engines begin to chug. Today is my birthday. I am 16 years old. The SSC Marlin is a vessel of hope for my new life. I turn and look east, see the continent slowly disappearing. It is a place I know and understand. It is a place that does not want me. Maybe the West will be more welcoming. The SSC Marlin is a troop ship. It ferried soldiers to fight Nazism. Now it ferries Europe's discards, immigrants with guarded hope. Will this new place give them identity? Will it accept their humanity? Only the future will tell. For now, they are happy. They have escaped Europe's hell. Well, we are something that I have to read to you. It's called Tree. In Jerusalem, in Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, in the street of the righteous Gentiles, in a designated third spot from the start, a man plants a tree. Womanizer, cheater, black market profiteer, risk taker, gambler, takes on the biggest gamble of his life. He puts 1,100 names on a list, lies, bribes authorities, wrenches a group of human beings from the jaws of evil. This group, under his protection, will survive the wall. Magnificent this tree, dedicated to Oskar Schindler. As it grows and spreads its limbs, roots and branches proliferate. So do the descendants, the saved group's new generations. I bear witness, evil can be harnessed. People of goodwill can make a difference. Forever I shall be in debt and grateful to Oskar Schindler for giving me a life. And I want to thank this community for giving my parents dignity, restoring their humanity, giving them 50 wonderful years of life here, and for giving me the things that I needed to really move forward. Thank you very, very much.
These are a sample of the poems, of Celina's poems that she wrote after attending the 70th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz in 2015. And they're also what inspired the book. Here to share some personal reminiscences and to talk about how the Schindler Cup, which obviously came from the Karp family, and the book got started, are Robbie Winnick, who is our president emeritus for the Iowa Jewish Historical Society Board, Bill Fredericks, who is the author of the book, Scott Temple, who is the grandnephew-in-law of Celina's, Moses Gaynor, who is the grandnephew of Celina and Irvin Karp, Ann Blumberg, who is a family friend and a member of the board of Iowa Jewish Historical Society, and Steve Semkin, who is the publisher of the book, Ice Cube Press. Robbie, would you start us off with a discussion by telling us how the Schindler Cup came here and how the book came here?
Happy to. Thank you. Marv and I returned to Des Moines in 1959 and immediately became friendly with Celina and Irvin Karp, Phyllis and Irvin Karp, Celina's parents.
Is the mic on? Can people hear?
Oh, it's
Hold it up a little bit.
Is that it? Yeah. Sorry. Marv and I became friendly with Phyllis and Irvin, and one night at their home, I happened to see the enamelware cup that was sitting on a shelf, and I asked Phyllis to tell me about it, to which she said this was the cup that they received at when they got to Schindler's factory, and that she and Celina ate every meal with that cup. I thought it was a beautiful story and a beautiful cup. And then in 1998, as Sandy said, we brought the traveling exhibit of Unpacking on the Prairie to Des Moines and partnered with the Iowa Historical Museum downtown. At that time, they asked that we augment the exhibit with Iowa artifacts. Well, I called Celina and I said, would you loan us the cup? That we really would like it as part of our exhibit. To which she was very gracious and said yes, she would loan it to the Historical the exhibit lasted for, I believe it was 6 months it was here. And at the end, we I believe we kept the cup. We were, well, in the museum is what I meant to say. At that point, we were in a one room on the 4th floor of the art building at Drake. And so we had very little, but the cup was there. That was 1998, as I said. Then I need to keep these dates correct. After all, we're a historical museum. So in 2002, we moved to this beautiful building. Thank you, Mary Buxbaum Scanlon. And I once again imposed on Celina, made a call to her and said, we are having our opening of the Iowa Jewish Historical Museum in our own building, and we would very much like to now have the cup as a part of our collection. And she replied to me, well, my children are in the process of talking to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and it's going to be up to them whether or not they want the cup to stay here. And I said, oh, Celina, your parents were so loved here, and this was their home, and this is where they'll always be remembered. The Holocaust Museum will end up having many, many cups, and so, you know, please impose on them to think about giving it to us. I can't tell you exactly in remembrance, but I believe it took maybe a half an hour or 45 minutes, and I had a return phone call, and she said, the cup is yours. So that was the beginning of our really owning the cup. Then in 2017, we wanted to continue on this relationship with Celina, and we asked her to become our featured speaker as we began our community outreach program. Once again, she agreed, and that is when she came, and these clips are from the time of her speaking. She spoke at Valley High School. She spoke at Grinnell, Roosevelt High School, North High School, where she had spent her one year, senior year, and graduated from North. She also had graduated from Grinnell, and they still have a love affair with Celina. She was on this stage in this building in 2017 that these clips are from. And after she finished, and she said that she was going to do something different here. This was her last speaking engagement, and it was for the Jewish community mostly, and that she had done some poetry, and she wanted to make the program around her poetry. When she was finished, David Gradwell, of blessed memory, came to me and said, these need to be printed. And I went to Celina and I said, Celina, you have got to have your biography written and poetry. She said, I just gave all my papers, all my poetry, everything now belongs to the Iowa Jewish Historical Museum, and it is up to you to be the ones to decide what you want to do with it. Well, that was the impetus for me saying, someday we have to do this. What's our next date?
What's the next date?
Yep, was it 3 years ago, Bill?
Yeah, we visited in September of 2019.
2019, all right. At my 85th, for my 85th birthday, as Celina said, my children and some friends gave money and started a Robbie Winnick Fund for the Historical Museum to do with something that otherwise wouldn't be able to be done that I wanted to do, and that was the first thing I said I wanted to do. Well, never thinking how much it really had to cost. And so I said to Sandy, this is what we would like to do. And she said, well, let me think about someone to do to be the author of the book. And she came to me and said, Bill Fredericks, and he's put out many books. Now, go read some of his books, which I did happily. They're very, very, very good writer, wonderful to read. And so we found out what it was going to cost, and at which time I then asked a few people to help out. And Lou Hurwitz put us over the top. And we went to Bill, who was ready to sign with someone else, and graciously said, okay, I'll do it. So this is why we are here today, and that is the story I have to tell.
First of all, let me say that the money did not go to me. The money went to Simpson College, and I got a year off of teaching. So just to be clear, I wanted to start with a few questions for all of you, however. My first question is, how many of you know Celina? Personally, a few of you do. How about how many of you have heard her speak? Almost all of you have heard her speak. How many of you were at the Valley High School talk in September of 2017? What do you remember about that talk? Cold. It was very cold. Besides Celina's amazing story, what impressed me was her poise. The room was 50 degrees, maybe. The air conditioning was malfunctioning, but Celina handled it with great poise and grace. And I should say, at the time, I had no idea I'd be working on the biography, so it's a real privilege to be able to do that. My next question for all of you, how many of you knew Irvin or Phyllis Karp, Celina's parents? Okay. Now, see, I see a lot of people I should have interviewed that I guess I didn't. I'm a little worried about that. What about the cup? Did some of you know about the cup while it was in Phyllis's house? Did she talk about the cup? Do you remember her discussing the cup?
She said that she had it there so that she would remember that there are always better things to look forward to.
Thank you. This is a granddaughter of David Karp, and yes, that's exactly right. She said she kept the cup to remember that better days would be ahead.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I have your attention. My sister is in Columbus, Ohio, live streaming this event. She has requested that everyone please speak up and use the mics. She can't hear very well.
All right. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Is this better?
I'm just texting her to see if she can hear now.
I feel like a Verizon commercial. Yeah.
Well, it says it's better, could still be enhanced. They have to speak into the mic the whole time. In other
Okay.
words,
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry.
You should know that she says that all the time.
All right. Is this better now? Okay. We'll see. One other question. How about David Karp? How many of you knew David Karp? All right. I see relatives raising their hands and a few others of you. David Karp was Irvin's older brother. He had come to the United States in the early 1900s. He became a successful businessman here. And it's David who brings Irvin and Phyllis and Celina to Iowa and Des Moines from Europe in 1947. So he was a very important figure to the Karp family. So let's fast forward then 70 some odd years. Sandy and Robbie asked me to write the book. I was overwhelmed. I had heard Celina speak and was very impressed with her talk. I wanted to write the book, but I had two other books I was working on. I was finishing a book on Roxanne Conlon, and I was working on a little book on Bill Knapp, a second book on Bill Knapp. So I asked Sandy, I said, may I start this in a couple of years? And Sandy said, no. No, we need you to start this right away. And I said, okay. Oh, and then Sandy said, the book will only take about a year. And I said, no. I've written biographies. It'll take at least a couple of years, maybe 3. And Sandy was sort of bothered by that. But we continued talking. And I finally agreed, yes, I would love to do the book. I would do my best to finish the other 2 books quickly, which I did. I finished them that December, I think. And I checked out a whole bunch of books, 25 books. My wife could testify to this, 25, 30 books from various libraries on the Holocaust, on Schindler, on Polish history, and World War II. Did some background reading. Started working on the Celina book full-time in December of 2019. Now, dates are important here, so pay attention. December 2019. By January, I was ready to start interviewing people, and Lou Hurwitz, I'm sorry he's not here, but he was my first interview. Great interview. Told me a lot about Celina's high school experience. Then I called Celina, and I interviewed her on the phone, and I said, I would love to come out to see you. She said, please do. I said, well, I'll be out there in late March. Note the date, March 2020. Is everyone paying attention? March 2020. What happens in March 2020 besides my failed trip to California? COVID hit, as you all know. There were upsides, believe it or not, there were upsides for the project because of COVID. The first upside, all those library books I had, libraries were closed. They did not demand the books back, so I got to keep the books for months. And COVID cut down on distractions. I had almost no distractions, so I could focus entirely on the book. There were downsides. I did have to cancel the trip to see Celina, and boy, the interviews I did with Celina and the rest of the 50-some-odd people I interviewed for the book, I did online, through Zoom, or by telephone. Not nearly as good as being in person, but that's what I had to do. The other downside was that archives were closed, so important documents I needed, I couldn't get to. It took months to get some of the primary documents that I needed for the project. I finally met Celina in July of 2021. My wife Jackie and I flew out to California. We had a lovely evening with Celina and Binny. Celina cooked us a wonderful lunch. She's a marvelous cook. I just wish we could have met her before that, before July of 2021. By then, the book is moving right along. I've written 6 or 7 chapters. I have the rest of the chapters outlined, and I have a publisher lined up, so things are looking really good. I finished the manuscript in November, I think, November of 2021. But by that time, I'm having disagreements with the publisher. And I contacted a good friend of mine. Her name is Holly Carver. She's a former director of a press living in Iowa City. I sent her the manuscript and I said, do you have any ideas? And she said, oh, Bill, the manuscript is good. I suggest you contact Steve Semken of Ice Cube Press, which I did. I called him in December. I think Holly had sent him the manuscript. And I think, Steve, I'll let you say a few words. So here is Steve Semken. Thank you very much.
I want to make sure I'm definitely heard on the live stream. So if it's too loud, just turn your volume down. All right. Well, I really love the University of Iowa Press because they keep turning good books like this down. No, I don't really know why they did, but I was extremely happy to have you get in touch with me. And I thought you were going to say, I sent it to him in December, and I swear like 12 hours later, I'd already said yes. Because I pretty much did immediately think, oh yeah, there's no way he wouldn't do a book like this. And what I have to say isn't super important, I don't think, to the whole issues here, but I was very, like, when you start working with something a lot, at first we were thinking, we were thinking about the poetry, and I remember you sent it to me, and in my mind I thought that wouldn't be that important, because you told the whole story, but now I instantly can tell that's one of the best decisions that you made in some ways, was to include
and
that.
Let's just see, for all of you, the poetry is in the book, all of
Right.
the poetry, so pick up the book and you can read all the poems.
Right, and I mean, we didn't have a cover when we started, and we didn't have the title, honestly, when it started. And so a lot of things just happen that way, and I think it's, from a bookmaking point of view, it's pretty exciting the way it all happened. But mostly, I'm just very thankful that you trusted me with the story, because it absolutely needed to be shared with the world, for sure. And thanks all of you for being here.
Who wants to go next?
Is it on? Hello, am I on? Okay. I want to see a show of hands of those people that grew up in Des Moines and went to Fereth Israel Synagogue, remembering the candy lady. Phyllis always had candy, hard candy, in her purse, would take it out, give it to the kids, they would unwrap it, and you would hear this crinkling because it was the hard candy in the cellophane that crinkled. Anyway, those are some of the fondest memories that my children have of Phyllis. My parents and Phyllis and Irvin and Fred Bedauer and Ann, may they all rest in peace, were such good friends. And my husband's family was of Polish descent. I'm Lithuanian. I know nothing about Polish cooking. And one day, Larry's saying to Phyllis, "Man, I would love to have a bubala." And Phyllis says, "I make bubala." And I'm going, "What is a bubala?" And Phyllis, from then on, Pesach, for Passover, she would always make Larry a bubala. And he was in seventh heaven, absolutely seventh heaven. They were such dear people. We adored them. And I'm so privileged that I knew them and that my children knew so many of the survivors of the Holocaust.
Scott, you want to go next and share some memories?
I hate to ask for a show of hands again. Can you hear me? Yeah. Is this okay? No. You're not on. Okay. Is this better? Ooh, it's a lot better. Quick show of hands. Who knew Phyllis? Quite a few people. She's been gone for, I think, 25 years. I want to talk about Phyllis. I've been a psychologist for about 45 years. And one of the things that I learned as a psychologist is if somebody has a set of skills that you don't have, figure out how they did it. If they can't explain how they did it, model them. And Phyllis was one of the people that taught me those principles. After Schindler's List came out, I had talked with Phyllis a little bit previous to that about their Holocaust experiences. Very limited, and I of course would never push, but I was curious because I knew from Rachel's grandfather, David, a little about what they had gone through. But after the film came out, she became a great deal more willing to talk with me about what she went through. And I learned a number of things from her. One is she had a profound understanding of the difference between good and evil in human beings. And she was very tough in the face of evil. But it didn't overwhelm her. She continuously expressed a sense of gratitude, a sense of strength. And the more we talked one evening on the phone, she knew I was getting angry. And she said, "Scott, Jews should have no place for bitterness in their lives about what happened. What you should do instead is find people who need help today, help them." And on the basis of that, I ended up starting a project working with families of murder victims in Kansas City for about 3 years. I ended up getting some publications out of that, one of which went into a prominent family therapy journal, Family Process. I was really proud that I finally, after multiple revisions, they said, "It's coming in." And that morning that I learned from the editor that it was accepted for publication, I called Phyllis. And Celina answered the phone. I was completely surprised. This was in February of 1997. And she said, "How did you know?" And I said, "Well, how did I know what?" She said, "How did you know that my mom died last night?" Well, I didn't. One of the things, the last thing that I want to say, in line with what I said earlier about modeling, when I began to understand two things about Phyllis. One, the incredible steel she had in her spine, and the incredible compassion that she had for humanity. I asked her, how are you able, in the face of everything you saw, to be who you are, to radiate the kind of kindness and wisdom that you radiate? And she said, "I don't know." She said, "What choice did I have?" And to be blunt, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what choice you have. I grew up being more prone to being anxious and depressed. Here it is October. I can watch leaves falling from the trees and start to get depressed." And she said, "Well, I can't explain it." And I said, "Well, then I'm just going to have to figure out how you did it, and I'm going to do it too." And I'm still working on it. And I have a lot of work to do, but she seemed to have made it.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Is this good? Okay. So I just wanted to comment really on one point I think that in the book was brought out in a very interesting way. And as I think about it, it really reflects in a lot of ways my experience of the Holocaust, because as explained in the book, it took a long time for Celina to be able to tell her story to others, and for her to open up, really. And I think that that was true for many, many people of that generation. And I know for my generation growing up, this was also something that I experienced. So, for example, when I was a little kid, I remember we had some friends. This was in Buffalo, and these were friends of my parents, actually. And you know, the man had tattoos on his arm, for example. And I remember I was a little kid. I asked him, "Well, what is that?" And he said, "Well, that's my phone number. That's the way I remember my phone number." And I later found out that he was in Auschwitz. And I didn't know that my grandfather had 3 sisters, all of whom were married, and I think all had multiple kids that were annihilated in the Holocaust until I was in college, and I had a girlfriend from Germany that I brought home, and that was the first time I found out about my great aunts, actually. Another story, my sisters and brother and I have a memorial lecture every year in memory of our parents in Columbus, Ohio. And one year we had a speaker who wrote a book. It was called Hunting Eichmann. Trying to remember the name of the book. It will come to me. Or the name of the author, I should say, Hunting Eichmann. Somebody could probably Google that. Anyway, and I knew that I had a relative in Israel that had something to do with the Eichmann trial. And it just so happens that that year I was in Israel, and I visited with her. Her name is Yehudit Karp. And she was married to Natan Karp, who was one of my grandfather's brothers. No, I'm sorry. Natan's father was one of my grandfather's brothers, so my grandfather was Natan's uncle. Anyway, it turns out that Yehudit Karp was an attorney and she worked, I believe, for the head of the Supreme Court in Israel, and she actually sat through the Eichmann trial, not the Eichmann trial, the Eichmann's appeal. She sat across from Eichmann while he was in that cage during his appeal. So in the same way that this was gradually learning about the Holocaust, for me personally, this was something I thought that that Bill revealed in the book that I thought was very helpful, and I can understand how it took a long time for all of this information to get out to the public and to be digested.
Bill, one of the things we were discussing as part of the prep for today were some of the unusual things that you found and some of the challenges in tracking down things that Celina told you and then using the German records. Can you share with us some of the surprises after the WASP leaves?
Sure, Sandy. One of the things I found when Celina talks about ending up in Auschwitz, she almost always says it was a mistake, it was an accident, they weren't supposed to be there. And what I found was they were supposed to be there. The women didn't know it, but the Germans had a policy. They didn't want disease to spread between destination camps. So they would stop at a third camp to delouse the prisoners, to let disease go the way it would, and then they would move the prisoners on. And evidently, only one woman of the 300 Schindler women knew. I think she was Schindler's maid or something, I can't remember. But she knew they were going to Auschwitz first, but none of the other women did. So that's one of the things we found.
And didn't you find another relative who was on Schindler's List?
I did. Maybe some of you know this. Celina always talked about her aunt, Phyllis's younger sister, Gucha, who lived with them in Krakow and then went with them to the ghetto in 41, and she said she married a dental technician. Celina could not remember his name, but she said the dental technician did dentistry for many of the Jews in the ghetto. I didn't think much more about it because Celina said the sister ended up being killed in another concentration camp. And Celina said the uncle never worked with us at Madrich's factory or Schindler's factory, and we lost track of him, so I didn't think much more about it. But then I listened to one of Phyllis's tapes from the early 1980s. And Phyllis said, when we were liberated, Freddie Oberfeld, she said it twice, was with us. And I thought, who was Freddie Oberfeld? So I called Sandy and I said, please listen to this tape, because I couldn't quite make it out. Her voice was very faint. And sure enough, Sandy said, yeah, the name is Oberfeld. So I thought, okay. I went to look at Schindler's List, and sure enough, there was an Adolf Oberfeld on the list. I thought, well, that's interesting, but I didn't know Freddie was a nickname for Adolf. So then I looked on the Madrich list. The Madrich list was a list of 70 people who worked for Madrich. That included the Karps. And these were people that were put on Schindler's List. And lo and behold, Adolf Oberfeld's name is on Madrich's list. So we contacted the Holocaust Museum, and they sent us all the records they had on Adolf Oberfeld, and the records came back, and it said he was married to Gucha Wittenberg. So we found this relative. We also found out that he ended up making his way to Israel, to Palestine, and he died there in 1950. That's all I know about him. But so I told Celina, and she was stunned. She didn't remember that Oberfeld worked in the Madrich factory, and that also probably means her aunt worked in the factory as well. She didn't remember him going on to the Schindler factory. But of course, she's a young child, so she wouldn't remember these things. But that was maybe the biggest discovery. And so His name is here on the cover with Celina and her parents.
Yeah, I didn't know Fred was also a nickname for Adolf either.
Well, I mean, maybe we misunderstood, but I was pretty sure she said Fred. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention one other story. I have other relatives in Israel, and actually they may be on this call now. Leora Givon and her brother David Karp, another David Karp, who also lives in New York City, and their parents, Tzvi and Minna Karp, were high school sweethearts. They were separated during the war for many years, and both survived. They were miraculously reunited, and both made their way to Israel. And Leora actually wrote a book about her parents that was published in Israel. And also, thanks to the pandemic, I participated 2.5 years ago on Holocaust Memorial Day in a Zoom that Leora gave. She gave an amazing talk. She knew every camp that her parents had been to during the war. She went into excruciating detail, and it was an amazing story. And her parents, once they were reunited, got married. I think in Felix's, I don't know if it was his basement or his backyard, but they were married about 2 weeks after they were reunited after the war. So again, this is another story, and I have a feeling that there are probably many other stories like this in my family and in many other families that we just don't know about.
If I could just add real quickly, Felix was a younger brother of Irvin and David Karp. But if any of you are interested, the Holocaust Museum has an incredible collection of records, and those records were very helpful to me. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to seek records from the Holocaust Museum.
And Bill's donating all of his research. Comes to us too, and we have a lot of records here. You've probably heard us talk about our oral history collection. We have what may be one of, at the moment we know it may be the only oral history that Irvin Karp did. It was done in the early 1980s. And what's really interesting to look at how our perspectives on history change is in this interview done in 1981, he mentions Schindler once. You have to really listen hard to even catch the name, because at that point, the world didn't know about Schindler. Keneally's book about Schindler's List, not its original title in Europe, but hadn't come out yet, and his story had not been told, and Irvin didn't tell it either. Later, of course, back after 1993, and the Schindler's List movie came out, and then all of the Shoah Foundation interviews. So with so many of the Holocaust survivors, Steven Spielberg did give them their voice, as Celina always says. And that's part of why this book took a little longer to do than we anticipated. We love the idea of the poetry, but Celina was so young when the Holocaust ended, and she did so much with her life afterwards that we wanted to be able to find a way to tell that whole story. I know in reading the book, Celina had talked about her work as a teacher, that she had said to us numerous times that she felt teaching kids gave her childhood back, and working with special ed children gave her an opportunity because she felt she understood them, because she had lost her childhood and what she had been through during the Holocaust. And I think in the book, some of the stories that surprised me were how Celina was in on the ground floor of some of the work with special ed. students that she started as a volunteer and then was offered a job as a part-time teacher and then eventually full-time teachers. And as one of those coincidences, when we had just started, we just made the decision to do the book because of the funding. We received 2 or 3 emails out of the blue. Celina had spoken at a couple other places. One was in Las Vegas, and I think one was on Zoom, and somehow connected with some of her former teachers. And they emailed her, and she sent us copies. And the emails, one of them talked. Those are former students. They were elementary students, and they talked about how she had changed their lives. And I must admit, I nearly cried when I read several of them. And I think that's part of what this story is. We've heard Celina talk about her Holocaust experiences, but I think you'll also enjoy reading about all that she's done with her life since then. We wanted to open this up to the floor for questions. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you'd like to share? Oh, come on, someone's got to start.
Yes.
I remember, I don't know if you can all hear me, I'm sure you can. I could hear you just. I'm coming. I remember when we went to the preview of Schindler's List here in town, and Phyllis was there, and she was so gracious to hug every one of us and again to say thank you, and we're like, no, thank you for showing us your strength and how you could move on from that.
I have a quick question for Bill. Did you ever, I don't know if you mentioned this, did you ever get to meet Celina in person?
Yeah, we flew out there in July of 2021, so we spent the afternoon there, yes.
Do you see parallels taking place today with what's going on in Ukraine when you look at the early stages of persecution of the Jews in Germany?
Go ahead.
I know that. Can you hear me now? No, that was not working.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, as I understood it, are there sort of echoes today of what took place in Germany in the 30s?
The question was, do you see parallels in what's taking place in Ukraine today with the early stages of Jewish persecution in Germany?
I would allow somebody else to answer. One quick thing that I would say in response about America is that when Celina did her talk at Grinnell, her commencement address, we spoke afterwards, and I know that she expressed concerns that what we are observing in America today reflect echoes of what happened in Germany in the early 1930s.
If I could just add, and I agree with what Scott said, but I also think we're seeing far-right movements across the globe. And I think the parallels are much broader than just what's going on in the United States. So yes, I think there are some parallels.
I know when Celina came that first time was also, there were a couple incidents in Iowa, and she had sent some emails before her trip, asking about it. If you remember, some students who were wearing Ku Klux Klan outfits, it was in the paper. So yes, she had that concern, and others see it as well. Any other question?
Yeah, Bill, in doing your research and talking with Celina, is there any other anecdotes that really impressed you or made an impression on you that may not be widely known about or shared in general culture?
I'll tell you what struck me, and I think anyone who knows Celina would back this up. Celina was reluctant to talk about it for years. She was late to the game. Many others, Holocaust survivors, had started talking about it. But one of the reasons Celina didn't want to talk about it was pretty widespread, that many survivors did not think their experience would be understood. But what really struck me about Celina was she wanted to be seen on her own terms. She wanted people to see her and know her for what she'd done as a parent, as a teacher, as a friend, as a neighbor. And I think that's what struck me. She didn't want to be seen as a survivor, but she wanted to be seen as a person that made her own way. And I would say I think she got a lot of that from Phyllis. Phyllis was very, very important in that regard.
I recall we used to have a really strong Holocaust education program that we shared with public school districts here in Iowa, and I think that faded out. I may be wrong. How can we what plans are being made to use this resource, this incredible resource, to bring the issue up again? And is it a job that we can do in the state of Iowa?
There are plans, and some of them started this summer. The Federation reinstituted the Summer Institute for Teachers. Started it back, we did it again in June. One was done here right at CASP, and one was also done virtually so that we could reach farther out across the state. In addition to that, the Federation and the Historical Society are working with the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. And we are in the process of developing a series of teaching trunks that will be using the story of Iowa survivors to teach about the Holocaust here in Iowa. The first one is underway. We've seen a prototype, and it is the Karp story. It will have some excerpts from some of the oral histories we have. It will include the book. They've started an attempt to do a reproduction of Schindler's Cup and the Scissors. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be available. I think sometime later this year. And then we're also working with them on two other teaching trunks. One will be about Fred Bedauer, and one will be about David Fischel. The Federation has also been working on reconnecting with school systems to be able to share this information. When Celina comes, hopefully in the spring, we're going to be working with North High School, and they have volunteered to be a conduit for getting the word out to other principals across the state about the resources that we have and about this program and the book. Having a principal send the email out will cut through a lot of the extra emails in teachers' mailboxes. So yes, the Federation and the Historical Society are working very hard to get this word out.
I have a question from a listener in San Francisco, my brother Stephen, who is a moviegoer extraordinaire. Anyway, he wanted to know whether you found Celina's story consistent with what we saw in the movie Schindler's List.
Yes. There were historical inaccuracies in the movie, as there were in the Keneally book. But Keneally, I mean, it was a historical novel, which we should emphasize. But yeah, both the movie and the book accurately capture the horrific scenes, I think. There's some historical details that are wrong. But for instance, and I suppose the biggest problem, it overemphasizes Schindler's significance. He didn't handpick the individuals to be on the list. It was a Jewish secretary who really put most of the people on the list. The Madrich list that Celina and her parents were on, it's called the Madrich list. It's unclear if Madrich was the one that actually drew up the list or his manager, Raymond Titch. It probably was Titch. But the movie is an outstanding film, and the book is an outstanding book, but yeah, there are some historical problems.
Thank you.
One of the things that Phyllis said to me, one of the things that Phyllis said to me about the film was, if you watch the opening scene of the movie, when Schindler is working the Nazi crowd at a club, she said that Neeson was Schindler. So there's something that he must have captured in the character that she said that was him. I just found that to be astonishing.
We happened to be at the theater the same night watching the film with Irwin and Phyllis. And as we left, I was walking right out with them. And I said to Phyllis, I watched you through the performance, and I said you were almost non-emotional, but just watching. And I said, what did you think? And she said, I felt it was very true. That was her words.
Could I add something? One story that Celina or her son Rob told me, and I can't remember which one. After Neeson had been selected for the part, but before they start to do the filming, Rob had called his mother, and he said there's some discussion that Neeson is probably too handsome for the part of Schindler. And Celina said, oh, no, Schindler was a very good-looking man.
So the teaching part has been ongoing since, well, I know 2011 when my mom died. I did it for Steve, who published my mom's book of Phyllis and Irving are in the book, and many people, the Bedowers, my dad, Charles Anelick, my mom was Adele, and my mom couldn't speak because she died, and Steve's like, Julie, you need to represent this, and so I did. I'm not a public speaker, but I did go to Davenport and spoke, told about my mom's book, and Steve you couldn't have a better publisher and empathetic person than Steve to do this. So the teaching process has been ongoing for so long, and my mom tried to get it, going back in 2011, and I think it has, and I'm very happy to be here for this book. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone.
My dad was a German refugee who was able to get out of Germany in 1933, but lost a lot of his family. And when our 3 children were quite young, Tim and I took them to Germany, and we had an opportunity to go to the Yiddish cemetery and walk around and find grave sites of family members. And it was an experience that they still remember. Right now, I think it's started by the German government, but I'm sure you're aware of it. You can apply now for dual citizenship with the United States and Germany by presenting lots of documentation. Well, my parents have been deceased for quite a long time, and yet my mother left us a folder full of everything, including my father's passport and all kinds of information. So our son, who's an attorney in Washington, D.C., has been very involved with the German ambassador there to see what will happen. It's a period of much anti-Semitism right now, and it's building greatly in Germany. But the process has been a tremendous experience for him in what they want and in what papers he had actually. So it's been a very interesting experience. Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to mention too is this research is ongoing. With Adele identified so many of the Holocaust survivors who came to this area. But from what we can find out, we don't have a list in Iowa of all of the Holocaust survivors across Iowa who settled here. And we're trying to seek out that information. Some of the records that Bill was talking about that have opened up in the past 5 years, one of the interesting facts that we found out is that quite a number of Holocaust survivors actually went to, more of them went to Sioux City than came to Des Moines, and it was a jumping off point for moving west and north. So there's still a lot of stories out there to be told. This is one of them, of which we're very, very proud. But please be assured we're still doing a whole lot more research. There's so much more to learn, not only about the people we know about, but those we don't. Any other comments before we encourage people to over here?
Well, it just helps us here.
I would like to recognize Janice Rosenberg over here and Elaine Stanger, who so graciously helped in this oral history project for the Holocaust survivors. And I appreciate your work. We would not be here today without that history from Janice, who interviewed all the Holocaust survivors. So I thank you very much for working on this project.
And she's back doing oral histories with us again. And I agree. We are so lucky that not only the Blumenthal project, but also way back into the 1980s, that this community made the effort. The Historical Society received boxes and boxes and boxes and more boxes of oral histories and programs. We have somewhere between 400 and 600, and I say that because some are duplicates. And they date back to the 80s. It's the interviews with Irvin and Phyllis Karp in 1980. There's with Jacob Weitzman and others in the 1985. Those were all done by the Jewish community prior to the Iowa Jewish Historical Society existing. And they're key. Their stories, they tell us so much new information. And it's something that all of these tapes are available to you thanks to the generosity of so many people in here and matching grants from the State Historical Society of Iowa. We've now digitized, summarized, and made available over 400 of those tapes. It's a pretty long list on our website, but if you work through it and want to listen to any of the tapes, we can certainly arrange it. Robbie?
I don't know, is this on?
Yeah.
I just wanted to put in a final little plug for all of you who can possibly have the chance to go down this afternoon to the museum. So many people come and go for things and never get down there. But please go check out the cup, and also Celina, thank you ever so much for allowing us to do this story. And I know it's going to be ongoing education for the whole country. Janice, did you?
Sorry, I want to add one more thing. Adele Analik was the soldier who really captured and saw the necessity of capturing the histories of all the survivors way before we had a historical society.
Well,
made happen.
Thank you. And anyway, and also to Celina, thank you too. It's not only the cup, but Celina presented us also with the pair of scissors which Schindler had given to all of the people in the factory when it closed. He gave them bolts of cloth and 5 scissors and told them that this would be their livelihood when they left the factory, that they could sell these. And Celina kept, the Karps kept 1 pair of scissors, and that pair of scissors is now in our museum also. So please understand what a treasure trove you have in this city for the Jewish Historical Museum. Thank you.
Well, I was sitting here listening to it, and everything you all said, and it dawned on me this publishing thing is more than I thought. Only because I was really, I know one of the striking phrases that Bill and I kept working into the covers and everything was Oscar Schindler. Celina had said, Oscar Schindler gave me my life, and Steven Spielberg gave me my voice. But I think at this point, sitting here now, I'm like, I think if, and Celina, if you're listening, like I think you're now giving other people voices, and I just think that your stories and all these are really honestly keeping it all going.
So before you all rush to buy a book and have it signed by Bill, I have the honor of introducing Linda Bremen, who is the current president of the board of directors of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society.
I'm not sure it's an honor, but anyway, thank you, Robbie, Bill, Ann, Steve, Scott, Moses, and Sandy for sharing your personal stories with all of us. I'm sure that your insights make each of us want to delve into the book as soon as we can. But before we rush to pick up a copy of the book and begin our journey with Celina, we want to take a moment to thank the key people who made this project possible. Their generosity, hard work, and caring took the idea of a book from a dream to a reality. You've just heard their stories, and we want to recognize their important contributions to making this book a reality. Robbie, everyone in this auditorium knows Robbie, her love of Iowa's Jewish history, and her dedication to preserving it and educating her fellow Iowans all about the aspects of Jewish history in Iowa. Robbie was on the IJHS board for 20 years and was president or co-president for 10 of these years. Robbie, thank you for all you have done for more than 25 years to preserve Iowa's Jewish heritage and share it with the world, for using your birthday money as a catalyst for this wonderful project. We cannot thank you enough for your generosity and for the countless hours you have donated to making the Iowa Jewish Historical Society an award-winning organization that is preserving our history and is successfully reaching out to the state and national communities with our story as we are seeing this book. To honor your work, we want to present you with the remembrance of the book and your accomplishments. I'll see if I can get it over there. Lou Hurwitz. Even though he couldn't be here today, we want to honor Lou. Lou, you and Marilyn have been longtime supporters and donors of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society as lifetime members, sponsors for all of Celina's trips to Des Moines, and donors for all of our programs. Your sponsorships helped us and offer all of Celina's presentations for free, so there would be no barriers to people hearing her testimony in person. When Robbie invited you to join her and the IJHS in this project, you jumped right in and became our largest donor. In honor of your outstanding generosity to IJHS, we hope that you will accept the framed copy of the cover saved by Schindler as a thank you for all you have done. And we will get him his copy. Bill. Yes. Our next special thank you goes to Bill Fredericks. Bill, you took our thoughts and rough ideas about a book about Celina and turned them into a full-fledged biography that captures the essence of Celina and her life story. As one recent reader said, he was blown away by Celina and the book. Another congratulated you on the depth of your research and the detail that the book contained. These are just a few of the wonderful compliments we've heard already. Bill, we can't thank you enough for the excellence of your work in telling Celina's story, and we hope that you'll accept this framed copy of your book as a thank you. The last person we want to honor is Dr. David Gradwell. Unfortunately, David can't be with us today to see the idea that he had suggested 5 years ago to be finished. David passed away in March, and we miss him every day. He and his wife, Hannah, were two of the founders of the Iowa Jewish Historical Society, and we are in their debt for being part of the initial dream of an organization to preserve Iowa's Jewish heritage and to spread the world about our history. David always encouraged us to find ways to share the stories and the details about all the aspects of Jewish life with the Jewish and non-Jewish communities. This book will help us achieve that goal. We will never be able to thank David enough for his wisdom, his guidance, and his push to make IJHS better year after year. I don't know whether his wife is here. I don't think so. Do you think his wife is here? Okay. We'll make sure David gets his copy of, Hannah gets the copy of David's book.
Thank you. That concludes our program. Obviously, the folks will be staying around to answer questions. We have a reception in the, we hope you'll join us in the Bookie Lodge for the reception. And if you'd like to purchase a book, part of the proceeds help to support the Iowa Jewish Historical Society. Thank you so much for coming and spending this afternoon with us.